May I have your attention, please? The podcast World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment, is now on the air. May I have your attention, please? The podcast World Awakenings is now on the air.
This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things metaphysical and spiritual, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
We welcome you to the World Awakenings podcast. Before we start, we'd like to tell you about a special ebook written by the show's host, Carl Gruber. The 3 Pillars, a simple 3-step process to manifest positive and permanent change in your life. The concise 32-page 3 Pillars ebook will teach you how to become a successful and consistent co-creator of your life path with the law of attraction. Yes, you can manifest the life you truly desire, and the ebook is absolutely free. Simply go to Carl's website, carlgruberlifecoach.com. That's KARLGRUBER lifecoach.com. Click on the header title About Me and get the free download today. Carl Gruber's free ebook, The 3 Pillars, will positively change your life.
Hey everyone, it's time for another awesome episode of the World Awakenings, the Fast Track to Enlightenment podcast. Almost 3 years in the running now, this is episode 38 and continues our focus on all things enlightening, both spiritually and metaphysically. And with that, let's take a closer look at today's featured guest. Now, my guest today is Jennifer Matthews, the founder and creator of the Superconscious Success Platform. She's a spiritual coach, law of attraction practitioner, author, naturopath, and host and co-host of the podcast Superconscious Success, Your Spiritual Shift, which I actually co-host with her, and the Fact to Fit Wellness. She's the host of the Superconscious Success Summit Series, which she will be holding 6 summits throughout 2021. On a personal level, she's a mother of 2 teenagers, a wife to a crazy scientist living in Perth, Australia. Her purpose and mission in life is to help others expand their consciousness by connecting with Source and their higher selves, as she does herself. Now, she believes she was put on this earth to instill connection throughout the universe and show people how they can use the magnificent powers of Source and the universe to manifest all that they desire with flow and ease. Boy, we're going to touch on that. That sounds great. She also aims to show women how they can reclaim their power and recreate their own identities to become the version of themselves that they were put on this earth to be, and also inspire parents to use this newfound connection to parent consciously. Jen believes that in order to obtain pure peace and wellness, you need to look after your body, mind, and spirit. So with that, hey, welcome my friend Jennifer Matthews from Perth, Australia. How's it going?
Hey, hi, it's great. How are you, Carl?
Oh, the usual. So excellent. It's amazing. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for finally getting me on the podcast and fitting into for me to be on here. I've really been looking forward to it. So I'm looking forward to a chat. We always have a lot of fun anyway, Carl.
Well, and, again, full disclosure to my audience, Jen and I co-host another podcast together. We're going to be teaching the Your Spiritual Shift course, a 12-week-long course together. But absolutely an amazing, interesting lady who's never bored, always busy. Her Superconscious Summit is going on. But, before we get into that, Jen, I want to find out because, we we go into amazing things that you're doing and accomplishing, but tell us, our audience, a little about your super interesting life growing up in an Aboriginal community in Australia's outback and how that has created how you see and interact with the world.
Oh, wow. Well, that's quite a story, Carl. And I've been really excited to be able to tell that story because most kids have not had the opportunities that we had growing up to experience the sort of things that we've experienced. And from a very young age, we lived on outback stations. We lived on Aboriginal communities. We lived on 4 different Aboriginal communities.
Wow.
From the ages of about 7 through to about the ages of 11. So we had incredible experiences that, like I said, most kids would never have even dreamt of. We went out hunting for honey ants.
Wow.
And widgety grubs and camping out with the Aboriginals. I was taught how to do dot paintings, Aboriginal dot painting art. And I'd sit down with the elders where we would actually carve out boomerangs and carve out hollow bowls. And then we would do the burning. I don't know if you've ever seen the burning of the wood art that they do. And
No.
they have some incredible art where they'll make bowls and then you get like this hot stick and then you actually burn the holes into the stick and it comes out with this dot painting art that the Aboriginals do. And I was blessed to be able to sit down around campfires with the elders doing this sort of art, and also growing up understanding the importance of unity, understanding the importance of recognizing that we are all the same and that we are all one. And it's something that I learned from a very young age because all of my best friends were Aboriginals. Growing up on the communities, I never went to school between the ages of 7 and 11. I was homeschooled, or I did School of the Air. So I had a very untraditional primary school year growing up, I suppose.
It sounds
Yeah, it was quite very untraditional. My brother and I would finish our studies by about midday. And then I worked from the age of 8, where I would go down to the local store and go down to, the local school, and I would, work because I enjoyed interacting with people.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing was I didn't realise until a few years later that because I was shifting around so much, my parents, they were our incredible parents, but we shifted around a lot as kids because of their work, because they actually ran the communities. So they were like the CEO of the communities, and they were brought in to help with the financial issues and help to, my dad was very good at, getting them all to work well together and to create that community. And so we shifted around a lot. And because of that, I made a lot of friends, but then I'd have to leave them behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was constantly saying goodbye to people. I was constantly making friends and then having to move on. And it hurt at a very young age. I didn't have a traditional group of friends that you could grow up with. So I realised at a young age that what I actually started doing was dissociating myself from people of my own age. And I started trying to hang out with people that were older than me because I knew I wasn't going to get hurt by it. I wasn't going to have to leave them behind. And that sort of like brought out my introvert side. And then, of course, my parents, being the wonderful parents that they were, decided when we went to high school that we would settle down and we would go to a traditional high school and get our education. But, of course, I didn't have the skills and the resources at that stage to be able to deal with kids of my own age because I'd only ever dealt with people that were a bit older than me.
Oh, wow.
So that brought about times of bullying, and they couldn't. I just realised as I was actually creating my keynote speech for my Superconscious Success Summit, I just realised when I put the pieces together that the reasoning was because the vibrations that these kids were in were so completely different to that which I was, because it was not where I was accustomed to sitting in that particular space. And so we didn't resonate with each other. And so it was interesting when you look back at the experiences, how you piece it together, and you start to understand that as amazing as my growing up was, there are benefits also to being able to grow up with the same group of friends, because I went to high school and I had no friends. It was an environment that everyone else had their cliques, and me, I was coming into an environment that was completely new, and so I had to build those friendships.
Right.
So I left at the end of year 10 and went to TAFE, which was college, and I was in my element because I was around people that were older than me, between 19 and 30 odd, and I resonated with them because that was the age group that I resonated with.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 15 or 16.
In college already?
Well, yeah, because they have, in Australia, they have like high school, then I've got something called TAFE, which is like a tertiary institute, and you can go there after you leave at year 10.
I see.
So you go there, and then from there you can go to university.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to there, and I resonated because all of my friends were older, and but I'm going to backtrack a little bit to the Aboriginal communities. Yes. Because I wanted to let you know about a couple of experiences that I had throughout the Aboriginal communities, which really shaped my spirituality. And this is why I really want to give this example, because this is the first time. I've always grown up going to church because my grandma, we're Anglican. My grandma grew up with us going to church. But when I was in the Aboriginal community, that was my real first go at true spirituality. That was when I realised that something else was going on. I was 10 years old at the time, and I was with all my Aboriginal friends, and we had gone out to the local waterhole, which was a lot of fun. It had just flooded, so there wasn't, so nothing could get in and out of the community. They couldn't have aeroplanes come in, they couldn't have cars come in, everything was flooded. And so we went to the waterhole because it was so hot, it was like almost 50 degrees Celsius.
Wow, that's hot.
So yeah, it was crazy. So we went out to the waterhole and we had a great time, we're splashing around, and I came back and everything was fine until about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up screaming. And I remembered thinking, what the heck's going on? My head was pounding. I couldn't move my neck. My temperature had spiked to like 43, 44 degrees. I was and remembering there were no doctors in the community. We had no doctors that were able to come in or go out. But thankfully my dad had been given the job. He had been trained to give tetracycline injections to the boys of the community because there was a specific ritual that went on that could cause a fair amount of infection. Okay. And I won't go into that because it's quite graphic. But so he was given the job of giving these injections out. And he rang up the doctor and he said to him, look, I don't know what's wrong with her, but these are her symptoms. I was 10 years old. He had to lift me into the bath to try and cool me down because my fever was so high. And meanwhile, I was just crying and screaming because my neck was hurting so much. I couldn't open my eyes. Mm-hmm. And the doctor said, you need to get her some tetracycline because she's got bacterial meningitis. And if you don't get something into her very shortly, then she's not going to be with us for much longer.
Yeah, you picked that up in the water hole, right?
Yeah, from the water hole because it went up my nose and caused septic in my brain. And so at this point, Dad was freaking out because he had just used the last vial of tetracycline. Mm-hmm. And he knew because he had just been out to to one of these rituals and he'd used it all up. At least that's what he had thought. And he had said to the doctors, he said, but I don't think I've got any. And he's freaking out. And then something just said to him, go and look in the fridge. And so he went to the fridge, and tucked right at the back behind something else was one more vial of tetracycline.
Wow.
And so I remember he gave that to me, and being a 10-year-old girl, he said to me, he said, if you're a really good girl today, and you're really good when I'm giving you this injection, because it's the most painful injection you're ever going to come across. It's almost like whipped cream. And he said, if you're really good, you can stay up an extra hour tonight. And I thought that was heaven. And so he gave me the injection, and must be amazing stuff, because within an hour it was gone.
Wow.
And from that point on, I knew there was something else looking out for me. And he also knew himself that something must have been happening, because he swore that he'd used the last vial of tetracycline. So that's just one of the stories of something that's happened that's really helped bring me closer to spirituality.
Yeah. And you may not, at 10 years old, you may not have even realized that, but as you look back on it, I'm sure that you saw that source was protecting you. And wow, that's amazing. I've got, as usual, a ton of questions, but I do want to go back to something that you said earlier, that within the Aboriginal communities, you learn that all about unity of their oneness, and I find it really interesting that native cultures around the world, not just in Australia, but in Hawaii, in any of Africa, whatever, American Indians, they all have a connection of unity and wholeness that most of the world has forgotten about. And I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, no, it's so true, because living up on the communities, there was a level of connection that we don't see in the city environment, unless you're in like a smaller sort of community. But even that has changed now, and I think a lot of the communities have been so westernized. There's been so much of the Western culture that's been integrated into their communities that they're losing that connection too.
Yeah.
And it's very sad to see. It's when I was growing up, I remember being on the back of the truck and going out and doing the hunting, and going out to all of the rituals and the dancing and all of that sort of thing. That doesn't seem to occur so much anymore, because that connection, that sense of community is not as strong as it once was.
I think that in those native cultures too, we see this maybe even reflected in documentaries or movies, that many of the elders in those native cultures are the anchor to those cultures, to remind them of the unity and oneness of all that is with nature and with each other. The shamans, it's their job to retain that. But yeah, unfortunately, as you say, much of that is getting lost. But somehow I don't think it's going to drift away. But with that, I want to shift back to you. I mean, you and I, in this podcast, much of it is centered on non-dualistic true spirituality, A Course in Miracles specifically. How did you come upon that yourself in your life? How did you start studying and learning about non-dualistic spirituality?
Okay, so this takes me back a little bit. So I'm actually a naturopath, as Carl said. So I've been a naturopath for about 15 years and absolutely loved it. I started a business online where, I interviewed experts all over the world on my podcast. I wrote 8 books. I created 2 courses, and I threw everything into this health field and absolutely loved it. I met so many amazing people, as we all do. But what I found was the health field could be very difficult, because when you're talking about nutrition in particular, everybody's got so many opinions about it. Everybody's got so many opinions about what's right and what's wrong. And so I found that no matter how much, because I'm actually a keto proponent. That's what works for me. But I do have a podcast with Colette, Fat to Fit Wellness, and she's a vegan. And the two of us, we are big proponents of biochemical individuality.
Yeah, you don't see that very often, a keto and a vegan getting together.
You could not have anything further from each other.
But it works.
But yeah, it does work, because the interesting thing is that we are both under the premise that everybody is so different, and the foods that resonate with each of us is so different. I tried vegetarianism for a couple of weeks and it did not work for me. But yet she couldn't do keto, and she said it herself. You know, being a vegan, obviously it's very hard to do a keto diet without meat. So but you've got to take into account your biochemical individuality, and you've got to understand, hi Maya, and you've got to understand that there is way more to it than just nutrition.
Yeah.
And there, you know, as long as you're getting good quality food that works well with your body, then that's all that really matters.
Well, and you know, I'm a distance runner, and for decades I have found that high complex carbohydrate type of foods, you know, so I have no problem eating a lot of you know, pizza and spaghetti and anything that has complex carbohydrates. But a lot of the sports nutrition that I do has you know, brown rice, syrup in it, and which is a complex carbohydrate, but it's good quality stuff. You know, I still eat junk, you know, but not nearly as often or as much, you know, just occasional thing. But yeah, so for me, that particular diet, and if somebody who was inactive was eating that type, they might gain 50 pounds, you know.
Exactly. And that's the thing, it works for you. But what I was finding that nutrition was such a complex topic that it was taking the enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
It was taking the enjoyment out of the business of being able to teach people about nutrition and biochemical individuality and all of that. And so I was doing all these interviews, and it was great, and I was having a good time meeting people. But then I woke up one morning and I felt empty. There was something that just was not right. And I realized at that point that what really, really I enjoyed doing was talking to people about mindset. And I loved it when I had the guests on that were talking about the impact that the mind had on weight loss, or the impact that the mind had on your appetite and your eating and all of that. And so I realized mindset was my passion. And that was where I wanted to shift to my podcast, Living Your Intention. And that was the next brand that I had, which was my mindset brand. I interviewed about 70 guests, mindset experts, on that podcast.
Wow.
And I had a really great time, and I started writing, and then around that time I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease.
Say that again.
Hashimoto's thyroiditis.
Oh.
And but I managed to reverse it with the power of the mind, and with just my own strategies. And so I started really delving into mindset, and I was doing Living Your Intentions. And at the same time, I was starting to go through my awakening. I was starting to delve a lot more into meditation and a lot more into spirituality, but I hadn't yet shifted. And then one morning I woke up, and I was at that stage that I was building my connection with Source. And I woke up, and once again I got pivoted. And once again I realized that I was no longer passionate about, I was still passionate about mindset, but I realized it went deeper than that. And I realized that without this connection that you have with Source, that our connection with everything in this world dissipates. And so I decided that was where I wanted to, that was my purpose now, was to teach others about connecting with each other, about the power of connecting with each other, and also the power of connecting with the divine in order to be able to manifest whatever you desire whenever you desire it, because we're all one, and we're all the one universal consciousness. And so, you know, to be able to teach people to live in love as opposed to live in fear is one of my greatest challenges. And it's something.
I just want to interject right there because of what you just said and here we are in the year 2021 in the midst of a world based on where everybody feels separate and is in fear. And yet here you are, a proponent, and you're not the only one. I mean, this is what all spiritual teachings teaches, that we are one. And this is why this podcast, World Awakenings, is all about. Why now more than ever is the population of the world awakening to all things enlightening and spiritual. And you know, so in the midst of global mass consciousness of separation, there is unity, there is oneness. I just, because you said
absolutely, and we are so blessed because we have got so many incredible light workers out there that are working together to help people to expand that consciousness and to understand the difference between the oneness that we are and also the separateness that our ego is trying to convince us of. And our particular program and our particular podcast is really delves deep into the ego and how we can differentiate between the voices of the ego and the voices of our higher self. How can we separate what's the voice that we need to be listening to and the one that is trying to detract us and trying to understand separateness? Because there is no such thing. But unfortunately, we're in a world in 2021 when COVID, and there's a whole heap of other stuff that's kind of on the back burner, which is waking up. It's waking up our society to information that they need to understand. It's really a time of awakening to be able to recognize that, come on, we're living in a world where we have our eyes open, but we're asleep. And we're not awake to everything that's possible. We're not awake to everything that's in front of us, to what source has offered us.
You know, I think this is a good opportunity. I mean, everything you just said is fantastically beautiful and true. And let's talk now. This leads us into your Superconscious Success Platform. You've got the Super Summit going on right now, which I'm fortunate to be one of the featured guests and speakers on. I believe coming up April 12th or something like that. But Tell people about what you're doing here. I know you're going to do like 9 million summits this year. Or so it's
okay. Well, Superconscious Success is my baby, or at least it's one of my babies. It came about after I went through my awakening. It came about when I finally realized that my purpose in life was connection. That my purpose in life was connecting with the higher self, or the superconscious. Now, we've got to understand that there are so many terms that are put out there that all mean the same thing. So when we talk about source, the divine, the universal consciousness, the higher self, the superconscious, God for some people, it's all the one thing. So you'll hear me, if you hear a lot of my talks, you'll hear me using the terms interchangeably. Because it depends on whereabouts it fits at that time. The universe, you'll hear me talking a lot about the power of the universe, and about, especially when it comes to manifestation, because the universe is so incredibly powerful when it comes to us manifesting what it is that we desire. And so Superconscious Success is my platform where I gather together a group of light workers and energy healers and people that are all out there to help people expand their consciousness and to become awakened to all that is possible. Because like I said before, we're asleep at the moment. And we need to wake up and recognize exactly what is possible, because we live in a society where we're in constant fear. We're in fear of the person that's next door. We're in fear of the person down the street. We're in fear of the news that's being thrown at us all the time. And if there's one tip I can give, do not watch the news.
Right.
We're in fear of what's going to happen. We're in fear of what has happened. We're just in constant fear. And that is not what the divine wants us to do. That is not where the divine lives. The divine lives in pure love. That is it. And I teach people to be able to raise their vibrations to a level that they can actually connect with their superconscious. They can connect with that higher part of themselves, which is the part of them that believes nothing but the best for them. They know that they are perfect the way that they are. It doesn't matter who you are. We all have a good side, that we're all going through our lessons. That's all it is. We go through life and we're learning lessons. And when we become judgmental and we judge others, then we separate ourselves. And so I'm trying to teach people, along with Carl, with our program, we're trying to teach people that judgment is one of the harshest things that we can do when it comes to separateness of our consciousness. So Superconscious Success is it's my platform, and I've got a Superconscious Success Summit series. So I'm doing 6 summits every year. The first one has just been launched, and there's been lots of little teething problems, but it's really come out well. And what I've done so that people have continuous access to it is that I'm putting out an episode every single day, an interview every single day for 40 days on my Superconscious Success podcast. So you can go and listen to all of those absolutely free. There are some incredible talks on there, Carl being one of them. He's talking about the 3 pillars, which is incredibly important, because connecting the body, mind, and soul is one of the most important things that we can do, which I'll take you in a little bit and explain a little bit more about that. But like, for instance, my one tomorrow, or actually tonight, she's already been uploaded, is on soul contracts. It's on when we move from the non-physical and we move into the physical realm, then we all have a soul contract that determines what our purpose is on this earth and what lessons we are going to be learning throughout that time. And so she talks a lot about that, and she was an incredible guest that really opened my eyes a lot too to soul contracts. I didn't know a lot about it. I knew that we had some, but she goes in great depth. So definitely listen to that one. That's Amanda Farrar. Beautiful woman that just really is super passionate about her particular topic. And we have so many incredible speakers, and I've tried to divide it up into a number of different segments, so that we have one on spirituality, manifestation, we have limited beliefs and emotions, we have discovering your purpose and your passions. Then we have some on people that have gone through adversities and they managed to get out on the other side. And, you know, we've got paraplegics there, we've got people that have been in fatal car accidents and have managed to recover from it. Incredible people there. And then, of course, how you can work with the divine to build successful, profitable businesses. If you're an entrepreneur and you're wanting to really thrive when it comes to business, then hiring the heavens, and there is actually a book out there called that, is the way to go. Because it's once you start to work with the divine, and once you start to listen to the messages that are sent to you, you become a portal for it. You become like, it just, as Carl knows, I use the term downloads a lot.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
It's a good description, yeah.
Yeah. So basically my downloads is when Source has sent me messages that has told me which direction to go, what I need to do, what's the best place to put my energy so that I can move towards my higher purpose. So talking to people about the power of connection and intuition and all of that is my absolute passion. And that's what my keynote presentation was on the summit on the 1st of the month. So you can go to the podcast and listen to that if you want to delve into that a bit deeper. But I've got a health and wellness summit coming up in June, one coming up in July on conscious parenting. I've got a special manifestation one that's coming up towards the end of the year, which will be on law of attraction and manifestation and, manifesting in the universe and all that amazing stuff. I've also got one on spiritual entrepreneurship. So specifically, I'll have guests on there that will show you how you can create your business utilizing the divine, whether we're talking about angels or your higher self or whatever. So we got that. And then at the end of the year, before we wrap up for 2021, we've got one specifically dedicated to spirituality.
Yeah.
And this is one I'm super excited about. It's going to be probably 40 interviews like the Super Summit, but we're going to delve really deep into quantums, into quantum physics. We're going to delve deep into kind of wrapping up everything that we've done throughout the year. And then, so if you attend all 6 summits, you are going to have an incredible amount of knowledge as to how you can start to really utilize these powers instead of pushing against the grain and just struggling every day to know what to do.
Well, I have to say that, since I've watched you build this Superconscious Success Platform, that anybody who checks it out and signs up for it is going to be very grateful, because on what's going on right now, the Super Summit, you have 40 experts on enlightenment and spirituality happening right now, all with different ideas and looks at it, but talking about awakening and enlightenment. I mean, for instance, you mentioned you healed yourself of that fancy name ailment. Yeah, right. And one of your guests is Canada's Fiona Williams, who is a Course in Miracles teacher, who healed herself using the principles of non-dualistic spirituality to heal herself of Meniere's disease, PTSD, and anxiety. And so it is possible. We have great divine power within us that has been sleeping and we're starting to realize we can utilize it. And the other thing too is, unfortunately, many people don't get in touch with the divine until something drastic happens. I mean, look at all of what they call NDEers, near-death experience people. Every one of them has literally the same story, that they died and they were given a choice in the spiritual realm. Well, you can stay here or come back. But when they're there, they choose to come back to be an NDEer. But they touch that true unity and oneness of all that is, where there's no judgment or sin or guilt. And as a matter of fact, my other Aussie friend, Brendan D. Murphy, has a podcast called Truthiverse. That is, his current episode is on right now about near-death experiences.
I love his podcast.
He's an
incredible guy.
Yeah,
and I recommend everyone go listen, because it can be a little bit deep. He has a lot of really deep work in there, but it can open your eyes up to a lot of the stuff that's happening in our consciousness in today's society, because people aren't recognizing what happens is that when it comes to our consciousness, if you don't start to listen to your divine and you don't start to listen to the messages that are coming, then it'll knock louder and it'll knock louder and it'll knock louder until you do start listening. And unfortunately, this is why people don't connect until something really bad has happened. So they don't connect until they've been diagnosed with cancer, or they don't connect until they're on their deathbed, because we've been programmed throughout our life to ignore these messages. We've been programmed by our ego to just listen to that part of us, because the ego wants to stay alive and wants to stay top of the game. So if we start listening to our higher self, then that kind of pushes the ego down. It pushes it down. And so we've been programmed to listen to the ego. And unfortunately, what's happening in our world today is that we have been ignoring the signs. And because we've been ignoring the signs, it's had to knock louder and knock louder. And unfortunately, it's come out in the form of COVID.
And if you can awake to all of this truth and beauty and light now while you're within this form and within this body, why wait until you have a death experience to discover it? Why don't you learn it now? And it is available to us right now. So
absolutely. And the thing is that once you do awaken to that and you start to live in flow and live in ease so that you don't struggle, then all of a sudden things are just, you live your days in joy.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, I don't know, have you ever read the book, The Game of Life, Carl?
Unless it has to do with baseball, no.
Okay. Well, listen to The Game of Life. I think there's an audio book as well. But it basically talks about how when we come from the non-physical to the physical, we come into this world, and the way we are supposed to, the way that the divine intends for us to live it, is to live it as though it's like a Monopoly game. It's to live it as though we can be lighthearted, we can learn our lessons from it, but at the same time we can just have fun. And and then as we go through life, we pick up those lessons, but it's not supposed to be so serious. And unfortunately, like I said, with the ego, sometimes it can cause things to happen. We all go through a lot of adversity in life that kind of signals us to get in fear, to be fearful.
Well, I went a couple weeks ago, as you know, but my audience doesn't know. I went to a couple weekends ago a workshop on A Course in Miracles with the two premier teachers in the world of it, Gary Renard.
I so wish I was there, Carl. I so wish I was there.
Really, and Cindy Laura Renard, the married couple, and both Cindy and Gary have emphasized for a long time in their teachings that you can connect with Source, join in unity, understand that this life, this world is nothing but a dream and an illusion of separation. But it doesn't mean you can't live normally and have fun and enjoy being normal and doing normal things. You can be spiritual, but yeah, you can still be a person, a normal person, and have fun.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, when we try to differentiate between the 3D reality and the 5D reality, we tend to sort of like, we lose connection between the two, and we don't quite understand what's meant by it. Now, we all live in a 3D world. We live in a world.
I just want to stop you, Jen. You and I must be, so vibrational. That was my next question. What is 5D? Go ahead and say what you do, but I want you to really expand on exactly what 5D is, because I still have questions in my mind, and I know you talk about it a lot. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so when we're in the we live in a 3D reality.
Which
so we live in
is our understanding of height, width, and
so it's our world around us. It's what we see with our 5 senses. That's our 3D reality. It's our everyday life. As we start to transgress to the 4D. 4D is basically when you're starting to recognize that there's more to it. You're starting to recognize that there's more to spirituality than there's more to this world than just what we see in front of us. But once you get to the 5D realms, that's when you really have kind of transgressed. That's when you can almost look down upon yourself and see everything that's happening in your 3D reality. That's when you can separate yourself. That's when people start to do lucid dreaming and they start to really enter those other spiritual realms. That's when you can start to connect with your spiritual guides and your angels and all the other divine messages that are out there. the 5D world is, someone was telling me the other day, she was saying she was talking to this guy, and he's a 5D. He pretty much lives his life in a 5D universe.
Wow.
And which is really interesting because he's like a multi-billionaire. But he doesn't keep any of the money for himself. So he makes the money and he's like super, super successful. You would never know that he lived his life in a 5D reality, but he just gives it all away. Because to him, he's living in a space of pure love. Once you're in a 5D, there is no fear, there is no anxiety, there is no separation. There's none of these emotions. You're in a constant state of high vibration. You've gotten to that state that you know that you can live in. If you've ever heard, have you listened to any of Abraham Hicks' work?
Oh, all of it.
Yeah, I love Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
And if you listen to that, they talk about the vortex.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're in a 5D reality, when you've, because I've recently just started doing quantum jumping, which is when you move between parallel realities. And that's a whole different topic on its own. But once you hit the 5D, you're almost in the vortex constantly. It's like, you'll dip out, but then, oh no, this doesn't feel good, so I'll just go back in. And you're in a constant state of high energy. And so everything flows. You get to that state that you are constantly getting downloads, and you're constantly just working alongside source. There's no more fear. There's no more pushing against it. There's no more, what's my purpose? You know what your purpose is. You're clear about it. You trust the universe 100%. You know that you can manifest like that. I want $10,000 all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. There we go. So once you get to that state, which is where we want to try to move ourselves to, that doesn't mean that you're not in the 3D realm. That doesn't mean that you can't live on this planet and you can't exist as a normal human being, and we're here to experience everything that the world has to offer us. That's why we came into our bodies. We came into our bodies to be portals, to be able to shuttle us around and experience everything that our soul wants to experience. Mm-hmm. That's why we're here. And so if we don't allow ourselves to do that, because I know that there's many people that will go and they'll sit on Mount Shasta, or a lot of the shamans will do that. They do a lot of their work on the mountains, but you don't have to do that.
Right.
To be able to connect.
Right. So like if you're sitting around with your husband, Vance, and all of a sudden you disappear, he goes, Vance is going, oh, geez, Jennifer's on another quantum jump. Let me know when you get back.
Oh, you know what? It's funny. It's funny though, because sometimes, like, I'll go into my meditation corner, and I'll just sit there. I'll come out of it, and they go, "Did you do another quantum jump?" Because they can tell when I'm sort of like when I'm sort of doing that. Because to quantum jump, which is really quite interesting, you've got to have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so you'll be sitting there, and to build up the energy, you've got to actually build up the energy. And so you look quite strange because you're sitting there and you're just, moving your arms all over the place. And but it's quite remarkable when you get to the stage, you can move to a different parallel reality and figure out what is your dream location? What is your ultimate dream? Once you discover what reality you're wanting to live in and you focus on that reality, then anything's possible. You can move there. Like it's quite remarkable. And like I said, that's a topic unto itself.
Well, we've folks, we've been talking to Jennifer Matthews from Australia, author of books like Alter Your Money Mindset and Understanding Keto. And she is a naturopath and a podcaster on 3 podcasts, a summit organizer, all kinds of great stuff. We've covered some incredible stuff here, a spiritual coach. Jen, what's the URL, the link for your summit?
Yeah, so just go to superconscioussuccesssummit.com and everything will be there for you.
And it's going on right now. You can sign up for the 7-day free pass. There's other alternatives if you want to access a lot more on there. Superconscious Success
Summit.com.
I should know.
And each of the summits it'll all be under the same URL, but it'll be changed across as the new summit rolls.
Yeah, don't miss my talk on April 12th.
Do not miss his talk on April the 12th. And it was incredible. And as you can see, Carl and I, we have a connection. It's important that the speakers have connections with each other, that they can talk openly and honestly. And I think we've got that connection. So it's a really great talk.
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely. Listen. I love you a lot, Jennifer. And I'll tell you, it was fun turning the tables on you because you're usually the interviewer. You've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and this time we got you in the spotlight.
And you know what? That's the thing. That is so much fun. I'm loving this. I had an interview at 3:30 this morning because being in Australia, and then you have the States as well, the time zones can be a bit crazy. But I love to have the tables turned sometimes and be the person on the other side of it. And I thank you so much, Carl, because I've really loved telling my story, and I hope people got a lot of value out of the information that I've offered.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like I said, if you do want to know more about the power of connection, because that is my purpose in life, then definitely go to the keynote speech. I think that Carl listened to that the other day.
He did.
And that goes a bit deeper into how you can connect with Source and connect with your higher self. So yeah, definitely take a look at it.
And don't forget that Jennifer and I have a course together coming up, Your Spiritual Shift. You can go to the website, yourspiritualshift.com, and also on YouTube and iTunes, we have the podcast of the same name, Your Spiritual Shift.
Absolutely. And Carl and Carl and I are going to be building that up and hopefully getting some extra YouTube videos and stuff out as well. So that you can learn a bit more about non-dualistic spirituality and learn a bit more about the ego and the part that has to play, so you can start to put all the pieces together.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Jennifer Matthews. My cat Maya and I are going to go do a quantum jump now.
Awesome. In between your run?
Yeah, right. So no running today, tomorrow, but thank you, Jen. We'll talk to you soon.
Will do. Thanks, Carl.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber, a certified Law of Attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in each and every episode of this podcast, World Awakenings, as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that all of the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things metaphysical and spiritual, and just how they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment everyday life. Much love and light to you, my friend. Thank you for tuning in.